All right, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started. If you got your questions, go ahead and post them. Should be below the video if you're on a smaller screen, to the right of the video if you're on a larger screen. All right, so let's go down here, see what we got. All right, so first question here is from Mark V. So Mark V says, I've read that roll release does the same thing as bowing left wrist for closing and de-lofting club face. Not necessarily. So here's the thing. Like if you're really rolling your hands through impact, that's typically going to cause you to release the club early, typically. Because a lot of times you're rolling the hands over to square up the face because the face is open. And when you do that, that's going to lead to, there's lots of ways to do it. There's no right or wrong way. So what I would say is you can have a rolled release. You can have a more square release. What matters is that if you have a rolled release and you have a really hard time getting the club face square, you may want to consider because there's pros and cons, right? So if you have more of a rolled release, so let's say that, I'm sorry, I'm all over the place with this. I'm just trying to figure out the best way to answer this question. But let's assume that you're releasing the club out in front, right? Let's assume that you have a good release and you're releasing it out in front. So if you're doing that and you have a rolled release versus a square release, right? And let's say that you have a hard time squaring up that face. Well, if that is the case, then you may want to consider a more squared release because it's going to be easier for you to square up the face, right? The pros to a rolled release are that you can get more club head speed, right? So if the club is going through impact like this, so think of it in an extreme sense. If the club's going through impact like this, right, versus that, right? Well, the club is moving faster, right? That rotation of the face makes the club head go a little bit faster. So you get a little bit more club head speed from a rolled release, right? Whereas with a squared face, it's going to be a little bit slower, but there's going to be less rotation there, so there's less of a timing mechanism. So like I said, there's lots of ways to do it. If you have excellent timing in your swing, you have great ball flight control, and you love the speed, a little bit more of a speed that you're getting from a rolled release, and you're releasing the club out in front, great. I mean, that's basically what Rory McIlroy does, right? Roy McIlroy has more of kind of a rolled release through impact, right? Works really well for him, right? Now, if you're someone who has more of a squared release, right, and you do really well controlling the club face, I wouldn't try to probably switch to a rolled release because it's just going to make things a little bit more difficult for you. So, like I said, there's lots of ways to do it. You can get forward shaffling with a rolled release, but typically people who have more rolled releases are releasing the club early, right? So, I guess my question for you, Mark, would be, why are you asking the question, right? Is it just a curiosity, or is there something underlying there? And maybe I can help you kind of figure out where you want to go with things. But yeah, it's hard to know exactly, what you're wanting to get out of the answer to that. But there's lots of ways to do it. The main thing is that you have a good straight line release, meaning where the club is releasing, right? Where the club's splitting the arms, whether you're rolling the face over or keeping it more square through impact, that's the more important thing, right? That's really what you want to look at. But in my experience, players are generally going to be more consistent with less rotation through the swing. All right, so let's keep going. So Ron F says, for the average or high handicap golfer, do you recommend carrying 4 wedges or becoming more versatile with 2 or 3 wedges? It really just depends on what your strengths and weaknesses are, right? Um, if you're a really poor wedge player, you have a hard time hitting. I mean, you're just not really skilled with a wedge. You may be, and you need um, more distance with other clubs in your bag. You may benefit from carrying like an extra hybrid or fairway wood or something like that. Um, so it really just depends. It's not a cut and dry answer. It's not high handicappers and average golfers should carry this many wedges. It's more like what's your skill set, because there's different types of high handicap golfers or average golfers, right? I know I definitely know um, high handicap golfers that are great off the tee but have terrible, are not good putters, can't chip and putt. And I also know high and average golfers that don't hit the ball very far, not very good off the tee, but have really good short games, right? And that player may want to have more wedges in the bag because they're better with that part of their game and they're going to benefit more from that, right? So it's not, you kind of have to just find what works best for you. And really the only way to know that for sure is to get professionally fitted, by somebody. So Andy S says, I'm still unclear how if use my wrist in my backswing and follow through. It seems like I am leaving all kinds of power on the table, not doing correctly, but my attempts at hinging and unhinging giving pretty inconsistent results. So what I would try to feel like is that your wrists are more passive and that your body kind of drives things a little bit more. The best way I can describe like how your arm and your wrists and everything want to move, it's like throwing with your trail hand, it's like throwing a ball, right? So I'm gonna slowly hinge my wrist back, and then it's gonna be hinged back, and then I'm gonna release it, right? It's the same thing in the golf swing. I'm slowly hinging it back, right? And then the momentum of the club kind of hinges my wrist back, and then it keeps it bent back, and then it releases out in front. And then with the lead hand, it's very much like throwing a frisbee, right? If I were to throw a frisbee, right, I'm going to bring it back, and I'm going to hinge it if I can in the backswing, right, or in my backstroke. I'm going to turn my body away, and then I'm going to come down, and I'm going to let it go out in front, right? It's the same kind of thing. So sounds to me, Andy, like you're just kind of overthinking like how your wrists and everything should move in the swing. And it's really more, I would try to be more athletic with it. And like you're throwing a ball. I assume, you've probably thrown a ball before, right? It's the same kind of motion. So I'm bringing it back and I'm letting it go in front. I'm not thinking, if I'm throwing a ball, I'm not thinking, okay, right here, I need to hinge. And then back here, I need to hold it. And then, you're not thinking that. You're just being an athlete and just letting it go, bringing it back and letting it go. You need to do the same thing in the golf swing, right? When we're holding a club, essentially what we're doing with the golf club is we're just throwing that club head into the back of the ball, right? It's no different than throwing a ball out in front, right? So I think what I would try to do is my best advice for you without like seeing anything and knowing exactly what's going on would be to stop overthinking it, stop thinking so technically with it, and try to think more in terms of being more athletic with it, like how you would throw a ball or something like that. So Mark K says, you want to swing from inside, but how much is too much? Sometimes you hear you took it too much from the inside. Thanks, Q. Yeah. So basically your ball flight's going to tell you, right? So if you are hitting big blocks and hooks and things like that, that's an indication that you're bringing the club too far from the inside, because that's what happens, right? If I swing too much from the inside, meaning I'm swinging, the club's coming in like this, right? And basically, the only shot I can really hit from there would be, or the only shots I can hit from there will be a block. I could hit a block slice, but it would be a block slice, or a heavy draw or a hook. That's basically the shots that I can hit, right? So if you're getting that kind of ball flight, too much curvature, then that's an indication, that you're swinging too much from the inside. If you're getting a nice little draw out there, you're right where you want to be, right? But if you're just getting too much curvature on the ball, too much big blocks out to the right, big block slices, and too much curvature on your draws and that sort of things, that might be an indication that you are coming in too much from the inside. Um, tour players, when you look at tour players, they're, usually, within 3 degrees of neutral, right? So anything under 5 degrees is going to be, you're going to be pretty good. But when you get over 5 degrees, it can get too much. You get too much curvature on the ball. If you're able to get on a TrackMan to be able to measure it. But like I said, you don't have to have a TrackMan. You can just look at your ball flight and it'll tell you. Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer and all Ben Hogan, they didn't have a TrackMan to tell them if they're swinging too much from the inside. They just adjusted based it on what their ball flight patterns were. All right, so let's keep going. So James M says, I'm 75 and my eyesight isn't great, but my problem is that I can't track my ball off the tee. I hit it high and pretty hard, but have to rely on my partner to tell me where the ball went. Any idea as to what's happening? I don't think I can help you with that, James. I mean, I think that's probably more of a question for your eye doctor, if I had to guess. I mean, I have trouble seeing the ball too. It's a good problem to have. Sometimes, it means you're hitting it far enough that you can't see it. Right. Right. So, yeah, I mean, I can't help you there. I don't, it's not really my expertise. All right. So Alicia, maybe, I think is what it is. Says, can you suggest for upper and lower body separation during downswing? Can you suggest for upper and lower body separation in the downswing? Yeah, so we're going to do that in the backswing, right? We're going to get our bodies separated, right? So our hips are going to rotate somewhere in the neighborhood of 45, 50 degrees, right? And then our shoulders are going to rotate, somewhere in the neighborhood of 45, 50 degrees relative to our hips, right? And then at the start of the downswing, you want to try to kind of maintain some of that separation, and then you let it go, right? So that's what I'd be trying to feel is like in the start of the downswing that you're trying to maintain that separation a little bit, and then everything catches up. That's what I'd be trying to feel. Not sure exactly what your question is. Can you suggest for upper and lower body separation during downswing? I'm not sure if I answered that, but yeah, let me know. Maybe ask it in a different way. So Dan says, if your wrists are soft during the transition, doesn't the move happen automatically? It just depends. I get questions like this all the time where someone asks, is this automatic? Am I consciously doing this? Am I actively doing this? And the answer to the question is that if you look at your swing on video and you're not thinking about it, right? You just take a swing where you're not really thinking about anything. You're just trying to hit the ball, right? Maybe you're just thinking about your ball flight. You're just trying to hit the ball straight, right? And then you look at your swing and you're doing what you want to do without any conscious thought, then it is automatic. It is unconscious. You aren't actively doing it, right? But if you see something in your swing, right? So imagine this. Imagine if you said, is swinging the club from the inside is automatic, right? Well, not necessarily, because there's a lot of people that do this, and this is what they automatically do, right? So there's a lot of people out there that have to think to get the club to swing from the inside. They have to actively do something different to make it happen. So basically what you have to do is you have to work through the stages of learning if you want to change something in your swing. So the first stage is unconscious incompetence. So this is where you're unaware of what the move is or swinging from the inside. You're just unaware of any of it, right? And then you move into the second stage, which is called conscious incompetence. So this is where, okay, I know I need to swing the club from the inside, but I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to, I'm not sure how to do it. You're not able to do it yet. And then you move into the third stage, which is conscious competence. This is where you are able to do it now, but you have to consciously and actively think about it. It's not automatic, right? You have to consciously think about it to make it happen. And basically you have to do that until someday it becomes, you move into the fourth stage, which is unconscious competence. This is where it's just automatic. And I know you may not realize this, but I'm sure there are many, many things that you do that you've worked through this stage in, right? So if you typed your question, I assume that you have learned how to type, right? Well, same thing. When you learned how to type, you moved through stages of learning, right? You have to do the same thing in your golf swing. So if you know that's the best way I can answer that question. So you got to look, if you're seeing what you want to see on video, then yeah, if you feeling passive wrists automatically does it, then the answer is yes. But if it doesn't, then the answer is no, right? So you have to adjust your feel to get the desired result. And if there's nothing there to adjust, then you're golden. So Alicia says, I meant drill for upper and lower body separation. I really like the step drill for that. So basically, well, I mean, the power turn is just getting everything turned away, but the step drill, getting momentum, because the key to getting the downswing started from the ground up is to get momentum going to your lead side, get pressure into the lead foot, so that way you can start the downswing with the lower body. Where you lose the separation is when you start the downswing from the top down, right? If you're at the top of the swing and then the club goes, arms go, you're doing wrists, arms, then, then chest, then hips. It needs to be, feet, knees, hips, chest, arms, wrists, it needs to be in that order. So the way to do that, you have to look at, what the reason is for you losing that separation, and then work from there. But usually people lose the separation because they're not getting to their lead side soon enough. So the step drill is a great drill to help you to do that. So if you want to check out the step drill, it's in a lot of videos on the website. In particular, in our 20-minute distance fix, there's a sumo step drill, which would be really good for you to do if that is the reason that you're struggling to get the separation. So to get to that, click the instruction tab, then click the 20-minute distance fix, and it's in week 1 of the drills in the 20-minute distance fix. All right, let's keep going. So John I says, with the 20-minute shallowing fix, are we trying to shallow the club and hit from the inside? Can you comment on the desired club path for a straight shot? All right, so yes, in the 20-minute shallowing fix, you are trying to swing the club from the inside. You're actually trying to do it too much, right? So typically, the best way to fix any issue in your golf swing is to exaggerate the opposite, right? So if you're coming down steep and over the top, you need to learn to get the club to swing from the inside. And the first thing you have to do to get the club to swing from the inside is to be incentivized to swing from the inside. And the way that you get incentivized to swing from the inside is to close the club face. Get that club face really, really close. So that's why drill number 1, we have you just trying to hook the snot out of the ball, right? That's what we're trying to get you to do. Because if you're hooking the ball, that means that you're getting the face closed. It doesn't matter where it starts in that drill number 1. It's just that, are you getting that ball to hook significantly, right? And we're wanting to do that in 2 ways. Number 1 is with a stronger grip, right? You find your natural grip, which for most people is going to be stronger. And then 2 is to use the closing wrist angles. So that'd be wrist angles where we're bowing the lead wrist and extending the trail wrist and getting that club face closed down. So if we get a strong grip and we close that face down, I can swing over the top and still get the ball to hook, right? I'm just trying to get the face to hook as much as I possibly can. So that's number 1. So once you've done that, then you move into the second piece, drill number 2, which is now we're going to swing from the inside. Now that we are incentivized to swing from the inside, because if the face is open and I shallow out the club, well, I'm just going to hit the ball right and right. It's going to start right and it's going to slice to the right. So that's not what we want. Our brain is not going to let us do that. If your brain's going to say bad, no, don't want to do it. So if we get to where we're hitting left and left shots, well, now your brain's saying, well, hey, I need to swing to the right to not hit it so far to the left. And you'll have a much easier time shallowing out the club. So that's why we do it in that way. So now that we got the club face closed, now we're incentivized to swing from the inside. And we want you to overdo it. We want to get you to get the ball starting as far to the right as you can and hooking back, right? That's ideally what we want to have happen. And then once we're able to do that, then we tone it down, and we want to get it to 0 basically. Because if you're coming down steep, what's likely happening is that you're swinging to the left a certain amount, right, and the face is open. So we're just trying to get everything closed and swinging to the right, and then we just tone it down. That's what you want to do. It's much easier to do that. You're actually going to move the needle and get better faster doing that than to try to gradually just come down a little less steep, a little less open. It just takes forever to do it that way. So, but to get to where you're hitting a dead straight shot, right? That's just 0. Your square face in the club path. So if you think about this club is working into out, into out, into out, and then it's dead 0, and then it's working out to in, out to in. When that club meets the ball, if you're wanting to hit it dead straight, the face needs to be square, and that path of the club needs to be 0, right, to get a dead straight shot, and then center face contact. All right, so let's keep going. So Bobby says, do I want to have my lead leg straight or close to it at impact? I tend to be on the way up to straight from the bending through the swing. And if so, what drills should I work on to get there? So typically when you look at tour players, the lead leg isn't straight, but it's straightening. So it sounds like you're on the right path, but it's straightening. So as you're rotating your hips up and around, that lead leg is straightening out as you go through. But typically it's not going to be straight. If it's straight at impact, there are some tour players that do that. Like Brooks Koepka has his lead leg pretty straight. But basically, if your lead leg is straight, if you struggle with rotating your body coming into impact, and your lead leg is straight, that could be part of the problem, right? Because if my lead leg straightens out, I have nothing else to rotate my body except for the momentum of my arm. So that's, you may notice if you look at Brooks Koepka's swing, he's like this at impact, and then he doesn't really keep rotating his body until his arms kind of bring him all the way around, like the momentum of the club coming around. So basically, he rotates the body in impact, and then basically the hips stall, and then the arms bring him through. But most tour players are rotating all the way through, right? So if you want some drills for that, we actually have some drills in the Top Speed Golf system, the leg release drill. So just do a search on the website and search legs release. Legs release. So in the upper right hand corner, if you're on the normal website, you'll find a box there. Select that, search legs release. You'll find the video that I'm talking about. If you're on the mobile site, click the hamburger icon in the upper right hand corner. It's like 3 horizontal lines. That will expand a menu, and then go down to the bottom of the menu. You'll find the search box there. Search legs release. You'll find the drill that I'm talking about. All right, let's keep going. So Kevin D says, any tips on how to keep from getting stuck mid-round? Is it likely a tempo issue? Hard to say. I mean, it can be different for everybody. But some people have different tendencies. Like, some people maybe start getting lazy in the swing or things like that. So what I would try to do is have an understanding of what's happening when what ball flight contact issue is coming around, right? So you're getting stuck mid-round. Well, what's getting stuck? Are you starting to top the ball? Are you starting to chunk the ball? You're slicing it? You're hooking it? Like what's happening there, right? And then, realize and then look at your swing or work with an instructor to figure out, well, what am I doing in my swing to cause that issue? And then just be aware of it during the round, right? So let's just say a hypothetical, mid-round, you start chunking it, right? You're just chunking like every other shot, from the turf. Even the ones that you're not chunking, you're hitting behind a little bit, and they're ending up a little bit short. But some of them, you're just laying the sod over, and the ball's going 10 yards, right? So if that's the case, and let's say you look on your video and you see that you kind of hang back in your swing, you're not really getting to your lead side very well. So, and then maybe when you get lazy or you get fatigued or whatever it is during middle round, maybe you lose some focus, you start to hang back a little bit. Well, now you're aware of what the issue is. So now you can tell yourself, okay, I need to make sure I'm getting to my lead side. And then I would just do a rehearsal of that before your swing to reinforce, what you're trying to do. So if you struggle with that, if maybe you're on 12, right, and you chunked one on the last hole, and hey, I gotta make sure that I'm getting to my lead side. You might do a rehearsal, behind the ball real quick to reinforce that, and then that's kind of like your swing thought going into that shot. So it's hard to say. It could be so many things. You just have to. I would work with an instructor, or if you can identify yourself where what the ball flight contact issue is, and then what are you doing in your swing to cause that, if you're doing anything, and then just being aware of that during the round and to reinforce it, so that way you're never ever going to get away from everything. Everyone hits bad shots. Like tour players hit bad shots. Tour players have tendencies to come in during a round too. So it's just a matter of understanding what it is, so that way it happens less often. All right, let's keep going. So John S says, Clay has a great video I saw where he talks about bending more from the side with an open stance, feet together drill. How does he seem to know exactly what my game needs? I struggled with clean contact after finally getting to hit the greens. Sorry. I struggled with clean contact after finally getting to hit off the grass here up north. Can't wait to get back out there. Awesome. Thanks for sharing, John. Glad the video helped. So Kevin D says, thanks. You read my mind. Lazy, stay on right side. I'll try that. Yeah. So it just depends on what the issue is. That was a hypothetical. I don't know if that's your issue or not, but I would just look at what's the ball flight contact issue and look at your swing, what's causing that issue, and then just reinforce it and be aware of it during the round. All right. Let's keep it going. We got about 30 minutes left here. So if you got your questions, keep them coming. While you guys are coming up with questions, I'll take a look at my other stuff. All right, so Bob B says on short chips, do you recommend trying to stay with one go-to type of chip, or do you change with the distance, i.e., bump and run versus loft? It depends on your skill level. If you're not a very good chipper, I'd maybe try to get good at a shot, and then you can start kind of adding things to your repertoire, right? So that's kind of what the route that I would go. So yeah, I would try to get really good at, because it's way better to be really good at one shot, like have a go-to kind of shot when, and then rather than have like 5 different shots you can hit, but you're not getting good at any of them, right? So yeah, I would try to have one go-to one, and then maybe once you get pretty good at that, then you can start mixing it up and like add a different kind of shot and be able to do that really well. And you can just continue to get more versatile as you get better. So Kevin D says, "What is the best way to start the downswing, or is it automatic if you turn correctly?" Really, you need to get to your lead side to start the downswing. So the best way I can describe it is that it starts from the ground up, right? So in order to do that, we have to be getting pressure into the lead foot before the club starts coming down. So typically, I like to look into the reason why a lot of people ask the questions, because they just feel like they're swinging all arms or something like that. So if you're at the top of the swing and you're still on your back foot, you have to start the downswing with all arms, right? Because you can't really get into the ground with your lead leg to get momentum going, to get the rotation. It's hard. Imagine this: if you went up to the top of the swing, you were like this, it would be hard to start the downswing with the lower body. You basically have to just throw the arms in front of the body, right? If you're just doing it off your back leg, right? And also, you're going to hang back, right? If you do that. So what we need to be doing is we need to be here, and then before the club can switch directions and start moving that way, right? We have to get pressure here, and that's what starts the downswing. Then we can push into the ground, start rotating our hips, rotating our chest, and things like that. And to the second part of your question, is it automatic if you turn correctly? Not necessarily, but it makes things a lot easier, right? I can get here and still just throw my arms at it, right? It's not automatic, but you have to get here on that lead side in order to get things started correctly. So that's really the key to it, is making sure you get into the lead side. So good drills for that are the step drill. I talked about the step drill earlier. It's in several videos on the website. We actually have a video that's called "How to Start the Downswing," and it's in that. So if you want to search for that video, use the search box and search downswing. You'll find that "How to Start the Downswing" video that I'm talking about here. Since we don't have any questions, I'll find it and I'll put it in the chat for you. Bear with me here. I'm just searching the word downswing, and now I'm kind of looking at the videos. All right, so it's not on the first page. It's not on the second page. Oh, yeah, it is. Okay. So yeah, it's at the bottom of the second page of search results, the video that I'm thinking of. So I'm going to put it in the chat. So if you want to click on that video, the step drill's in there. Clay talks more about how to start the downswing in there, but that step drill's typically the one that's going to help people the most to start the downswing correctly. All right, we got a few questions put in there. Good deal. So John I says, for your standard straight shot, should you swing down the target line? Should you have a swing thought for the path or the club head in the downswing? Again, swing thoughts are relative to what your issues are. Not one swing thought is going to make everyone swing the same, right? So basically, the point of a swing thought is to help with the tendency, right? So if you have trouble getting to your lead side, well, your swing thought might be, okay, make sure you get to your lead side. If you have trouble swinging from the inside, right? If you come over the top, your swing thought might be swing into out, right? If you have trouble hitting the ball on the toe all the time, your swing thought might be, okay, I need to hit this on the heel. I need to feel like I'm hitting it on the heel. So that's really what the swing. Not everyone's swing thoughts are going to be the same. So you kind of just have to find the best way to use a swing thought. Is it has to. This is an absolute rule with swing thoughts. It has to improve your ball flight or contact. If you just have a swing thought to have a swing thought, it's just getting in your way. It's going to probably make you worse, right? So swing thoughts have to improve your ball flight contact, right? If it's not, then it's pointless, right? And it could actually be making you worse. And then as far as should you swing down the target line, well, technically you're not swinging down the target line. This club is going around your body. So we're not swinging the club like this, like it's not going straight up the target line. Now that might be a feel that you might have. That might be a good swing thought if you struggle with, over the top, right? Because if you're over the top, the club's like swinging too much to the left, right? So feeling like the club is kind of going up the target line could be a good swing thought to help you swing from the inside if you struggle with that, right? So you have to find what works, what helps you to hit a straight shot. It's not going to be a one thing. So what has to happen in order to hit a straight shot? Well, you got to hit the ball in the center of the face. You have to have the face square at impact, and you have to have the club path work at basically zero. So it's working into out, into out, into out. Then it's working out, in, out, in. It's got to be at that 0 point when you hit the ball, right? So if you can do that, then you can hit a straight shot. So you have to think about whatever helps you to do that, and that's not going to be the same for everybody. So Jeff M says, I tend to extend early when I try to keep my butt further away from the ball. I tend to pull it. Any thoughts? Yeah, I would need to see your swing to know for sure. But if a lot of times when you push the hips back, right? So when you're early extending, you're not rotating, and it's also helping you to swing the club from the inside. Most people early extend because they need to do it in order to hit a good shot, right? So most likely what's happening with you is you're probably coming down steep, right? So you're probably more like this in the start of the downswing, and then you early extend to get the club to shallow out. See, if I'm like this and I'm steep where the club's like more vertical here, and then I early extend, now look what happens to the club. It's now shallow, and I can swing from the inside, right? So if I'm steep and then I don't early extend and I rotate, look what happens to the club. It stays steep, and I swing over the top, and there's your pull. That's most likely what's going on. So you need to shallow out the club more. So what I would recommend doing is I would look at your swing on video, and what you likely need to do is work through the 20-minute shallowing fix to be incentivized to stay in your posture. Because if you're not, like I said, you're probably early extending as a way to hit a functional shot. So when you take that away, now you lose the function. You start pulling it, right? So you usually have to change multiple things. So you need to get the club shallowing out in order to be incentivized to not early extend. All right, so I'd recommend working through the 20-minute shallowing fix first, at least, before you start trying to push the hips back and things like that. The only time working directly on early extension is something you need to work on is if you're actually shallowing out the club too much in your early extending. So let's say you've already got this club shallow when you're coming down, and then you early extend, and now the club is still too shallow, right? So basically you're already shallow, you early extended and got it too shallow. Whereas what you may need to do is just stay in your posture and rotate through. That's the only time, but that's pretty rare. And I would say that's not your case if you're pulling the ball when you stop early extending. So you just need to work through the 20-minute shallowing fix would likely be what you need to do. So to get to that course, click the instruction tab at the top, then click the 20-minute shallowing fix. Get started on those drills. So Kevin D says, thanks, got it. I think I lose the flex in my legs and lose balance and contact with the ground. Yeah, so again, it kind of goes to what Jeff's question is that if you're straightening out your legs and things like that, you're usually doing that in a response to what the club is doing or something like that to be able to hit a functional shot, right? Because if I'm steep and then I really use my legs really well and rotate and all of this looks good, but my arms and my club is coming over the top, I'm not going to hit a good shot. I'm going to hit terrible shots. So what a lot of people will do is they'll stand up out of it. So now I can get this club working from the inside. But the problem is that I've had to stand up, move my chest away from the ball, and throw my arms at it in early release to do that. Now, that's much better. Early extending and hitting functional shots is much better than staying in your posture, chopping down into it and hitting pulls and pull hooks and slices and really making poor contact. So I'd much rather have somebody doing that. So what you likely need to do is work through the 20-minute shallowing phase. It's hard to say without seeing your swing, but again, that's probably something you need to do as well, Kevin. All right, keep the questions coming here. We got 15 or so minutes left. If you got your questions. All right. So Bobby says, I draw my higher irons but tend to fade the longer. Draw my higher irons but tend to fade the longer irons and driver. I think I may slightly be letting my rear elbow slide away from my body. Any thoughts or drills for keeping it close? Well, first of all, Bob, what I would recommend doing is not guess what you're doing to make the ball do what it does. I would actually know what it is and then work from there. So the best way to do that is to video your swing to see exactly what's going on. Because if you're hitting, I'm assuming you're wanting to hit a draw. So if you're hitting a fade, it just means that the face is open to the path. That's all it means, right? It's as simple as that. The face is open to the path. So what that means is that the direction the club face is pointing at impact is open to the direction the club face is moving through impact, right? So that a lot of times that does happen where with the longer clubs, we tend to fade them more. And the reason for that is the ball position, right? So on these longer clubs, I see a lot of people putting the ball position forward. Now, with your irons that you're hitting off the ground, you don't need to put it that far forward. Basically a little forward of the middle of the stance is typically going to be a good place. With the driver, we do want to put it more forward. So we need to have the sensation of swinging more from the inside and having the face more closed, right? So you don't need to overcomplicate it by thinking about my elbows doing this or whatever. Really what you need to do is if you got the ball positioned too far forward, you just need to move it a little bit back, more toward the middle of the stance, just a little bit forward the middle of the stance, even with the longer clubs. And then you need to feel swinging more from the inside with a closed face. It's that simple. That's all you got to do. That's a lot easier than focusing on what your elbow is doing. Just swing down the right field line with a closed face. Get the ball to hook and then ease off of it. It's as simple as that. I wouldn't overcomplicate it. So Bob C says, please explain spine tilt in setup and the effect it has. So basically, we want to be somewhere in that 6 to 8 degree range. That's going to be ideal. The reason for that is, well, one, our trail hand is lower on the club, right? So because of that, if I set up with no spine tilt, right? I set up everything straight up and down, no spine tilt. When I reach to put my trail hand on the club, well, that's going to open up my upper body, right? So I'm going to be like that. And typically if I'm like this, where my body is kind of opened up, my upper body, it's not necessarily definitely going to happen, but typically I see people who set up with their shoulders open, they'll tend to swing over the top and steep, and that's going to lead to poor shots. So if we get some spine tilt, that allows us to have our trail hand lower on the club, right? With also having everything nice and squared up to make it easy to swing from the inside. The other thing that it does is we want to be in a tilted away position at the top. We don't want to be like this, right? We want to have our body kind of angled away at the top. So If we're angled away at address, it just makes it easier to get in that angled away position at the top of the swing. A lot of times if I see people, they set up like this, where they're kind of straight up and down, their body's opened up. When they go up to the top of the swing, they'll tend to lean toward the target. And again, that will tend to lead to over the top kind of swings and poor ball flight. So the reason why we want the spine tilt at address is it just makes it to where we can have everything nice and squared up with our body, our feet, our knees, our hips, our shoulders, everything nice and square with each other. And it allows us to get that club on a better plane in the downswing and be able to hit better golf shots. It's not to say that you can't set up with everything open and be leaning toward the target and then get into a great position at the top. It's not to say that you can't do that. It's just typically it doesn't work that way. So if I have a student that sets up like the way I just described, no spine tilt. Let's say I had a student that set up like this, right? And then they get into a great position at the top and they're consistent with that. I'm not messing with it. It's fine. But if I have a student that's set up like this and then they're leaning toward the target, coming over the top, we probably need to tweak the setup to be able to make it easier to get into the right positions. All right, so let's keep going here. So Al P says, what is the best way to start your weight shift? Well, the only way you can do it is by pushing into the ground with your feet. That's the only way you can do it. Your connection with the ground is the only way you can shift your momentum anywhere. So with your feet, the best way and the only way. So Jeff says, I tend to lose my wrist angle at the top when I start the downswing. I'm very right hand dominant. Should I think about more control with the left hand in order to eliminate the cast? You may want to. You can try that and see if it helps. That can help, but sometimes it doesn't. So golf is a game of adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want. So that may be something that may help you to get the right feel that you want. What I'd recommend doing is working through our top speed lag course to get a feel of how to get that club lagging in the backswing. If you're one thing I will say, it sounds like this is the problem that you're having. One thing we want to understand is the moment that we fully hinge the club, that's also the moment that it wants to unhinge, right? So if I go like this, that club wants to bounce back right away. So if I'm doing that at the top of the swing, at the very top of the swing, I'm fully hinging it, then it's going to want to unhinge and start in the downswing. So what I would try to feel is that club is still kind of loading as you're starting down with the hands, right? So I'm here and I have not fully hinged the club and I'm starting down and that club is still loading when I'm coming down, right? That's what you want to feel like. And that's what we actually do in the top speed lag section of the top speed golf system is you kind of get that. There's some drills in there to help you to do that, right? So that's why I'd recommend checking out if that's something you struggle with is casting. That top speed lag course is a good one to help you get started with that. So to get to that course, click the instruction tab, then the top speed golf system, and then go to the top speed lag course. All right, let's keep going here. So LP says, why do the PGA guys seem like they are holding on to the impact position and not releasing as we are taught? Why do the PGA guys feel like they are holding on to the impact position and not releasing as we are taught? I wouldn't agree with that. I would say that most of them are. Now, if they're trying to hit like a special kind of shot, they may be trying to hold off the release. But if it's just a standard shot, I don't know any tour players that aren't releasing the club. They're all releasing it. I haven't seen any tour player, unless they're just trying to hit a special shot, come through like this. I don't see any tour players doing that on a normal swing. All tour players are releasing that club out in front somewhere. Maybe I'm misunderstanding the question now. I'm not sure. So John S says, I like that lag advice. No problem, John. So LP says, yes, that is what I mean. Yeah. So basically, if you see them holding off the release, what they're trying to do is they're trying to hit some sort of special low shot. They're trying to drive it in low. So they may be kind of coming in like that and trying to drive it in really, really low. But that's If they're just hitting like the normal, just trying to hit a very consistent shot, they're letting that club release out in front, just like we talked about in the top speed golf system. All right, we got about 10 minutes left. If we got any more questions. All right, so Jeff M says many tour players seem to have stronger grips than the average person, particularly the LPGA players. Is this something amateurs should try in order to square up the face better? Yes, absolutely. And Jeff, not sure if you've checked out our 20-minute shallowing fix, but that's what we do in there. Is we try to help you define a stronger grip because most people struggle with getting the club face squared up, and they make compensations in their swing to be able to do that. And a lot of times that is coming down steep, that is early releasing the club, and things like that. Because shallowing out the club is something that opens the face, right? If I have it like this and I swing down, my face is going to be open. All right, so shallowing out the club opens the face, which is why a lot of people struggle with that. If they use a weak grip, they may feel like the face is already open, especially if they're using a weak grip and cupping their wrist at the top and the face is wide open. I mean, they have no choice but to really feel like they swing to the left to be able to hit a functional shot. So I really like to try to get students to feel like they're closing the face. They're always closing the face, and they're closing the face. The easiest way to close the face is to use a stronger grip. I mean, doesn't get any easier than that. You just grip the club differently and boom, it's closed, right? So I'm like this, and then I just hold it a different way, and now it's closed, right? So it's just going to encourage better things to happen in your swing, right? So stronger grip helps you to close it, and then stronger wrist angles also help you to do that. So those are the things that we want to be doing in the swing to close the face. Now, if I get the face closed, now I need to do things in my swing to open up the face, right? Because if the face is too closed, I'm going to hit the ball too far to the left. So I need to get things to happen in the swing to get the face too closed, right? So how do I do that? Well, I do that by shallowing out the club. If I shallow out the club, remember, shallowing out the club opens the face. So now I'm incentivized to shallow out the club, which is something we want to do, right? I'm incentivized to rotate my body. If I rotate, right, if I stall in early release, that closes. But if I rotate and get my hands in front, that opens, right? So if the face is closed, now I'm incentivized to rotate my body and open up the face. So a lot of what we do in the golf swing is a reaction to what the club face is doing and how the club is moving, right? So if I'm standing up out of the swing, it's probably because I'm coming down steep and the face is open, right? So if I get the club shallow and the face square, then I'm incentivized to stay in my posture and rotate through. So LP says, can you bow your wrist at setup and then just swing back and forward, thus avoiding the timing of the bowing of the wrist? Yeah, you can. I don't see why not. I personally like to set up with being more relaxed. If you bow your wrist, you're adding tension in your wrist. Well, that doesn't mean you can't do it that way. But I personally like to set up more relaxed, right? More relaxed, and I like to set up with the face square. And I'm not setting up in my impact position, right? So here's my address position, right? So stronger grip, spine angle, right? I'm letting my arms just kind of hang straight down. And my impact position is going to be more like this, where my body's opened up, right? My hands are more in front. I'm more in this area, right? If I were to set up with a bowed wrist, right, like this, I'm basically hooding the face. If I want to set up in a relaxed position, although my wrist isn't relaxed because I'm bowing it, right? I'm just not letting my arm relax. But that's not to say that that can't work for you. You know, if it's better, you know, what I would try to feel is more relaxed. And then as you're bringing the club back, I would just kind of feel like you're closing the face from the get-go. That's what I'd be trying to feel like. And then you're keeping it closed, and that's encouraging you to do all the other things. All right, so we got a couple minutes left if we have any more questions. So John S says, nice job today. Thanks, John. Appreciate that. So LP says, how do you move the lower body and keep the top from moving with it? Well, you're not going to keep the top from moving. It's going to move with it, right? But it's about turning. And then when I'm turning down, I'm just keeping the separation. I'm just not letting my upper body catch up, right? It's moving. So I know it may seem like maybe players are like getting separate, like when they're moving down, that their upper body is moving the other direction, but it's not. It's moving with it. It's just not catching up to it yet, right? So if you imagine this, if my hips are turned 45 degrees and then my shoulders are turned 90 degrees, well, if I rotate my hips 45 degrees, I'd want to have my shoulders at 45 degrees. And then it catches up after that. So that's kind of what you want to feel as you're getting in here. And it's going with it, right? But then it catches up as you come into impact. It's about starting the downswing with the lower body, right? And then the upper body catches up. Where people get in trouble is where they're hanging back, they're on their trail side, and then they start the downswing with all the arms in the club, things like that. So Steven says, Q, does a stronger grip promote a shallower swing plane? Yes, typically, because it incentivizes you to shallow out the club. If the face is open, if you have a weak grip and the face is open and you're not like bowing the wrist like crazy to get the face closed, you're not really incentivized to shallow out the club. You're incentivized to swing over the top. Because if I have a weak grip and I'm not bowing my wrist like crazy to get it square, so let's say I have a weak grip and I cup my wrist at the top, it's open, and then I shallow out the club. Well, if I manage to hit the ball, I'm going to hit the ball start to the right, and it's going to slice to the right. I'm not going to hit good golf shots. So what I'll typically do, or what people will do, is they'll actually come down steep and swing to the left, so that way they can get the ball to start to the left and then slice back, right? So that's the problem, right? So we got to get that club face closed. Getting a stronger grip makes that a lot easier, and then you're actually incentivized and encourages you to swing out to the right. Right. All right. So we're right at 6 o'clock. Al says, okay, thanks. No problem, Al. So we're right at 6 o'clock. Thanks everybody for joining. We'll be back here tomorrow, Tuesday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Everybody have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk to you next time.